across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you all the way up until 1 o'clock, and we're scanning the news every couple of seconds to see if there has been a climb down from the threat by Donald Trump to destroy an entire civilization. Of course, that deadline is 1 o'clock our time. So things are a little bit different on this programme because we want to reflect on this. Would be a huge moment in human existence if it did go ahead. I literally cannot. There's no part of me that believes that this can happen in my head. Rational being, but then I am a rational human being. And I'm not Donald Trump. So I'm hoping that sense prevails. I'm hoping that there's a provision of an off-ramp. Pakistan has certainly said, look, 2 weeks, give us 2 weeks to track the diplomatic thing, but it's going to rely on Iran stepping back from the Strait of Hormuz. So who knows? I mean, both parties in this are intransigeable. They're not prepared to shift on things. Some quotes out of Iran saying, 14 million people are prepared to die to defend Iran. I don't know why the number 14 million. There's 93 million people in Iran. So it is an extraordinary situation, and we will be reflecting that, even if there is an about turn, even if there is something that changes. It's significant enough for us to cover that at midnight during Talkback. But I do want to hear from you as well. What do you think about Trump's language, his threats? Even if you're a forever Trumper, do you agree with the language that he's using and the swearing that he's been doing? I mean, he is the leader of the free world. He's supposed to be the most powerful man on the planet, and I can't see that that's the language of diplomacy. We're going to annihilate you, knock you back to the Stone Age. We're going to destroy all your infrastructure at the end of a civilization. They wipe out the entire country in 4 hours. I mean, it just. I've never lived through times like this. I've never heard anything like this before. So let me know, particularly if you are a Trump fan. I mean, do you even think this is going too far, maybe? Or do you think, no, he's being the tough man? This is what you need to do. You need to be tough. Well, tough only works if the person you're being tough with is going to give in to that. And I think Iran have made it perfectly clear that they're not. So we wait and see. We wait with bated breath. We will keep an eye on everything. Nothing has come through yet. I have a feeling that if Trump does go back on his promise to do that it will be later rather than earlier. So we will be wondering, but it is now the 3-hour countdown to that possibility. That's all I can say at this stage. So that'll be midnight as well. So let me know what you think about it all. Does it worry you? Do you think this is the right way to deal with Iran? If you are Iranian, I'd love to hear from you. Are you concerned? Are you worried? You must be absolutely terrified about the people in the country at the moment, and all those good, innocent people of Iran who just want freedom. That's all I can think of as well. So that's going to be at midnight. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do, of course, call you back. And you can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Andrew Hosken, the author and journalist, and my brother, is going to be in at 11 o'clock to go through the papers. He's been a war reporter as well, so he knows an awful lot about this topic, so he'll be interesting. Ingrid Stewart joins me as well to talk about Fergie, because where is she and what is she doing? And who's paying for her? Just thought it might be a bit interesting. We're also going to talk to our oil expert, Sam Rajewski. because there's been a lot of talk about North Sea drilling. Why aren't we North Sea drilling? Why you could get all this oil out and the gas out of the North Sea, and that'll save us all. So I thought we'd get an expert in and ask him if there's any truth in that. So that's all to come. But President Trump, of course, as we were saying, has threatened blanket strikes on Iranian civilian infrastructure, including power grids and bridges, and said that the entire civilization will die tonight unless the Strait of Hormuz is reopened by the deadline. I mean, just think of that. And this is the President of the United States saying that an entire civilization will die. Legal experts warned the move constitutes a war crime under the Geneva Convention, but the president has dismissed international law as secondary to national security. To avoid repercussions, Trump has reinforced sanctions against the International Criminal Court, signalling a total rejection of external legal oversight as regional tensions reach a breaking point. So been lots and lots of talk about war crimes and what constitutes a war crime, and funnily enough, it's not as simple as you would think. But joining me to discuss this is Bill Bowring, who's a barrister and Professor of Human Rights and International Law at the Birkbeck College at University of London. Bill, really good to talk to you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Petrie.
First of all, let's address that language, because in a court, preemptive behaviour matters, right? So what he's saying, we're going to wipe out a civilization, bomb you back to the Stone Ages. What would the court think of that?
Well, and the expletive as well. So the man does appear to be unhinged, and he says very different things from one day to another. And of course, there is the saying at present, TACO, Trump always chickens out. And we have seen in the past that deadlines seem to be infinitely adjustable. And of course, Pakistan has rather taken people by surprise. But if indeed the Americans go with the 2 weeks proposed, that will be a rather different situation. But I think in answer to your real question to me, Trump has absolute complete contempt for international law and for the United Nations and for everything to do with it. So if your question is what he's proposing, will it be a war crime? Are there war crimes already? Well, that is well defined in the Geneva Conventions, as you said, and in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. So we know what it is. And of course, there are people who have been prosecuted, among them President Putin and Mr. Netanyahu. Whether they will ever see the inside of a courtroom, that is another question. But I think it's much more remote when it comes to Trump and the people around him, who seem to be conducting a crusade at the present time. And we have this bizarre Christian Zionist language emanating from people around Trump. And Trump also saying, of course, that he acts according to his instinct, whatever that might be at any particular time.
I mean, you say that the war crimes are clearly defined, but there are grey areas in terms of if you blow up all the bridges. I mean, Israel is already using this excuse. They're saying, well, the military used them. If a power plant is blown up and they say, yeah, but the military were using that power, you could say that it is not a war crime in that instance, even if the intention was to destroy it for civilian structures.
Well, you see, there has to be proportionality and there has to be a clear military objective. And if you destroy all the power plants in Iran, which is what Trump was threatening to do, and the Israelis, of course, are saying that they will destroy all the railways in Iran and have already started doing so, that is targeting civilians and very hard to show what the military objective might be. Of course, apart from so destroying the country that it can't function at all. But I mean, Iran has been bombed ferociously for the past weeks now, and yet the government is still functioning, and they're still doing big damage to Israel and to other parts of the Gulf. And of course, the Straits of Hormuz, which Trump called the Straits of Trump very recently.
Yeah.
Ships are getting through by permission of the Iranians, and no doubt paying them, or that would, I think, be part of the deal. So the Straits of Hormuz are not presently closed, though of course a lot of the shipping which would want to get through is not getting through. So
well, let's just have a look.
We're in this kind of Alice in Wonderland.
I mean, it's extraordinary times, Bill, honestly. But let's have a look at the Geneva Convention. The United States, like Russia, is not signed up to the Geneva Convention. And this always interests me when we talk about these conventions and the International Criminal Court, and Trump has made it clear that he doesn't obey the international laws. So is it a paper tiger, or does the fact that he and Putin and others say, well, it's nothing to do with me, I don't agree with it, does that exempt them in any way? In which case everybody could say that.
Well, the Geneva Conventions were 1949, and everybody signed up to them, by the way, including Israel, as a matter of fact.
I thought the US wasn't signed up, or is it unsigned?
No, it's the International Criminal Court that they refused to.
Right.
They signed and then they unsigned, by the way. So they were very much involved in the negotiations for it. And they've been very much involved in what goes on at the International Criminal Court, one way and another. And as you rightly pointed out, extending to sanctions. And of course, when it comes to interpretation, well, Israel has argued for years that the Geneva Conventions do apply to them, but do not apply to the Palestinian occupied territories for complicated legal reasons that they put forward. So I think if such a matter came before a court, I have absolutely no doubt that there would be arguments that, of course, the enemy is using electricity in order to fight. And of course, bridges could carry military stuff. That kind of argument wouldn't last a moment in front of a court. But then, of course, they're not going to find themselves in front of a court. And part of the reason we have the International Criminal Court is that the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and the additional protocols 1977 actually did not lead to prosecutions. And so that was the reason that a lot of states got together to found the International Criminal Court. And indeed, some people have been prosecuted there, sadly, mostly from Africa. And there are prosecutions going on at the present time in relation to Israel, Hamas, and Russia. So
what would happen? I mean, I know this is looking at something that might not happen, but if it did happen, if the 1 o'clock deadline was met and this bombing went forward, what would be the next stage? What does the International Criminal Court do? I mean, obviously they're not going to get Trump involved, but they would sit and decide whether, first of all, whether this met the boundaries of a war crime, would they?
No, so I mean, there are various stages that have to have been gone through. So in relation to Israel and the Palestinians, the International Criminal Court accepted that Palestine is a state, and that therefore both Palestinians and Israelis can commit war crimes in that territory. And similarly with Ukraine, even though Russia is not part of the International Criminal Court. I think the United States, by the way, having failed to sign up, then entered into treaties with as many states as they could, where the states concerned promised never to be party to prosecution of Americans, even if Americans committed war crimes in their territory. So, and the United States put a lot of effort into that because they were seriously worried that there could be prosecutions. And of course, even if nobody finds their way to The Hague, it's still embarrassing for a state, and has been very embarrassing to both Israel and to Russia.
But if there were to be an arrest warrant issued, what does that mean? If this were to go ahead, if Trump were to be found guilty in absentia, would there be an arrest warrant? And what would that actually in real terms mean? Because Bibi Netanyahu and others seem to do what they like about it.
Well, that then puts all the states that have signed up to the International Criminal Court, which is a lot of states, in a very tricky position. Because if the person subject to the warrant sets foot on their territory, they are obliged to arrest that person.
Wow.
And of course, that has proved to be a problem for Putin. So it's not just embarrassing. And of course, for Netanyahu, now he can go freely to the United States, of course, which would never arrest him. But if there's a warrant out for him, then let's say that he was planning on a visit to Britain or to other countries which have signed up, that then poses possibly huge embarrassment. And there was already such a situation with al-Bashir, who had a warrant out for him and travelled to South Africa, for example, and South Africa was then put in a very embarrassing situation. So I would say that nobody is going to find themselves behind bars at that level at the present time. But I think the person concerned can find themselves in embarrassing and difficult situations, which they would prefer not to be in.
The other question that comes to mind is for the military, the American military, who've already been warned not to obey illegal orders, and presumably this would qualify as an illegal order to go ahead and bomb these power plants and bridges and infrastructures and things like that. And since the Second World War, just following orders has not been seen as a reasonable excuse, has it?
No. And I don't know if, of course, you have noticed that Pete Hegseth has been, talk about regime change, has been sacking people at the top of the American military. And I have absolutely no doubt that what's going on there is that these people have said, look, we don't want to find ourselves in front of a tribunal in due course. And of course, the military are thoroughly educated in the laws of war and what you can do and what you can't do. For example, using cluster bombs around civilians recklessly would be a war crime. And a soldier doing that kind of thing. And I think
so the individual soldiers would also be up for war crimes?
Well, you go to the highest level possible, obviously. So you go for senior people, for generals if possible. But the British found themselves in great difficulties with Iraq and with Afghanistan. And have you seen in the news today?
The Australian
officer who's now being prosecuted. And that's been a huge scandal in Australia. And this was war crimes, namely, killing people who'd surrendered, which you absolutely can't do in a war. The whole point of laws of war is that if you are wounded and can't fight, or you surrender and put up a white flag, then you are no longer fair game. And the reason that's taken seriously is because you don't know if you're going to be the one.
Exactly. Exactly, but it is interesting that Pete Hegseth's language as well has been illegal. I mean, saying things like, well, we're not going to follow these stupid rules of law, of war, we're gonna bomb without fear or favour or whatever. The other languages that he's using, which is not reasonable or expected.
It gets worse and worse. And of course, we know things which are probably not to talk about now, about Hegseth and his past and what he gets up to.
Yeah.
And to make this man the Secretary for War, by the way, not defence anymore, But as I say, I mean, there are more generals biting the dust in the United States than in Russia, and plenty of generals are biting the dust in Russia. So this is just in the past week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. They sacked another 4, I think,
Yes.
have gone. Yeah. I mean, but of course, there's no guardrails around the president. There's no guardrails around Pete Hegseth. I mean, there was that time when the president in the Oval Office said, "Oh, we're trying to negotiate," and Pete's really disappointed by that, aren't you, Peter? Because you wanted to carry on bombing. Actually said that in real time. I mean, there seems to be somewhat of a game to some people.
Well, so we're in a world which this cannot continue for very much longer, because we're talking about 3 very old men causing havoc.
Yeah.
And at least 1 or 2 of them are not quite straight in the head, as we can see.
Yeah.
And so I would say, on the one hand, we're back in the 18th century, where might makes right and so on. However, I think even in the 18th century, it was not octogenarians who were deciding what happens.
Yeah.
And I was just reminding myself that in the Second World War, in the period immediately before the Second World War, Hitler was in his 40s and Stalin was in his 50s, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, and now, like you said, it's these old men making decisions that they're not going to have to live with. That's the truth of it, isn't it? That they're never going to have to live with the repercussions. Well, not for very long, anyway.
You're right. Sadly, you are right.
Yeah, I know. They shouldn't be allowed to be making those decisions, I tell you. Bill, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Bill Bowring there, who's a barrister and Professor of Human Rights and International Law at the Birkbeck College of University of London. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, which is the deadline that Donald Trump has set to wipe out an entire civilization. He said a whole civilization will die tonight. Now, I can't believe that this is going to happen. Every fibre of my being thinks that there will be a way out of this. However, it's 2.5 hours now, just over, and we're obviously scanning all the wires and everything to see what's coming through and what's the latest. And there's been nothing since the Pakistani Prime Minister urged Donald Trump to extend his deadline for Iran to allow diplomatic efforts for a peaceful settlement. So that was the last thing that we've really heard. Apparently Donald Trump is aware of that missive from Pakistan, and that's as much as we know, but we are keeping an eye on it. And at midnight we will be addressing this, and I want to talk to you about, what do you think of Trump's language? What do you think of this narrative, this rhetoric, this big strong man stuff, right? If you don't do what I tell you to do, then I'm going to bomb you into the Stone Ages. I'd just be interested to know what you make of all of that. And if you are Iranian, or you've got Iranian friends and family, I'd love to hear from you as to how you're feeling as we approach this deadline. I mean, I can't believe, I can't. My head's not letting me go there. And Graham has said, don't be afraid of what he may or may not happen at 1 o'clock. I think we all need to be afraid of that. He said President Trump is acting on the UK's behalf. He's on task and going for it. Look at Starmer. He's a waste of space. I think two things can be true at the same time. Starmer is pretty much a waste of space, but I actually don't believe that he's acting on anybody's behalf but his own, I'm afraid. But thank you for your kind words. I think we all need to be concerned about what may or may not happen at midnight there. But to slightly happier things, we're giving you the chance to win 20 grand, completely tax-free, £20,000 straight to your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here is how you can win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at 11 o'clock, Petrie Hosken will be here to go through the papers and the latest news on this crisis. In the meantime, though, for the last few years, a debate over North Sea drilling has largely been a tug-of-war between climate versus economy. Now, more than ever, a third factor has to be considered: geopolitics. With the recent volatility in the Middle East and the closure of the key shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz, the UK's energy bills are spiking again. And the government's clean energy superpower pledge is facing its first major stress test. And it's splitting Labour internally. Labour-affiliated unions like GMB and Unite, who've become increasingly vocal, warning that a ban on drilling without a bridge to green jobs will result in a repeat of the 1980s industrial collapse. So what difference would it really make to this country, to our bills, to anything, if we did drill everything, drill baby drill, in the North Sea? Well, Sam Rajewski joins me now, expert in international political economy of energy from the University of East London. Good to see you again, Sam. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Much is being said, a lot of people talking about we've just got to drill. Tell me why that's not going to make more than 1 or 2% difference to what's happening.
Thank you for having me back on, Petrie. Well, I mean, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, expansion of North Sea oil would help a bit because it would, add some oil to the market. But obviously, we have to be realistic and we have to understand that it would not transform the UK's economy or indeed energy standing as such, because it depends on a number of factors. But, when you look at just few factors here. I mean, for instance, production. Production peaked in late 1990s at around 4.5 million barrels of oil per day production. At the time, UK was top 5 producer of oil in the world. Today, the output for both oil and liquids is around 1 million barrels of oil per day production. When it comes to government revenues, it will help to increase the revenues. At the moment, it's anything between 4 to 6 billion pounds per year. But I think the most important thing today, as you rightly pointed, obviously, is the energy security aspect. You touched upon geopolitics. So indeed, if you look at the grand scheme of things, then energy security is probably the most interesting aspect. That's largely in the context of geopolitics. It will reduce reliance on imports. It would perhaps increase resilience during supply shocks, such as the one that we're experiencing. And indeed, but we need to remember that oil is traded internationally, and UK remains both an importer and exporter of different crude. So in other words, it's not yes or no answer. It's probably maybe, depending on certain criteria and circumstances criteria that will have to be met.
The thing is with oil is that we don't own it, right? I mean, it is owned by the oil companies who pay to extract it. What we get from it in terms of the exchequer is the tax revenues from it. So even if we did miraculously discover a huge oil field that could supply the entirety of the UK, that would be traded on the international oil markets and reduce the overall cost, perhaps, for everybody. But it still isn't ours. We can't say, right, well, we'll have that. We'll just use that and everybody else can go fly.
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, it's actually the UK government that holds ownership over the resource. But obviously, this resource is licensed to private companies, and private companies hold the right to extract and profit. So yes, I mean, obviously the government gets its own share through the revenues and taxation, which is quite high actually in the UK. But we have to remember that, legally speaking, it's actually the UK government under the Petroleum Act 1998 that owns the resources. But obviously, you're probably talking about the reality. The reality is that companies are in the driving seat because, they operate the infrastructure, they have the platforms, they have the pipelines.
They invest all the money, don't they, in order to take the oil out. So in real terms,
share in the production. Absolutely.
Yeah, in real terms. The other thing is that I've been looking into this is that actually the two oil fields, Rosebank and Jackdaw, are not depleted, but that now getting the oil or the gas out is much more difficult because we've got the easy stuff out already.
Yes, I mean, overall, it's very much the case. I mean, if you look back in the history, the Brent which we use as a benchmark for international oil trade, was the light sweet crude, which was the most common in North Sea, and indeed, which is still being used as the benchmark for different types of oils traded internationally. But we have to remember that with the time, what is left is largely the medium crude, which is slightly heavier, more sulfur content type of oil, which is obviously widely usable, but needs more processing. But we also have this more heavier crude that you mentioned, which is more thicker, more viscous, and more expensive to refine, and indeed found in the newer, more complex reservoirs, which is in fact not very different to the picture around the world. Most of the easy to recover sweet light crude has been used or is being exploited. So most of the time we kind of find more difficult oil to recover. So indeed this adds, if you like, new dilemmas, because in terms of the cost, in terms of attracting the companies that will be interested in this type of place.
Because it just becomes not cost effective, does it? If it's more difficult to extract from the ground and it's more expensive to refine, then the cost of that it reaches a point where you can't make that money back from the markets.
And ultimately, we need to remember that this is a market, as you rightly pointed. It means that companies are interested in return on investment. So for each pound invested, they want to increase through the profits.
Yeah. And actually, they are making massive profits at the moment, aren't they? These companies.
They are, but I have to play devil's advocate here. And if you look at the taxes that companies are also paying on, they have been paying for over the time in highly volatile market, because prices may be very high now, but they haven't been that much high in the last few years, and there have been ups and downs, and companies still have to pay high taxes. If you look at the UK, for instance, as of April 2026, the UK's North Sea windfall tax, also known as the energy profits levy, is set as 30-80%, which on top of other taxes, supplementary charges, the Ring-Fence Corporation Acts, tax, which is 30%, it all sort of come close to 78%. So that's quite a big chunk that the government takes away from companies. And again, this is the company's perspective, and I appreciate that, as consumers, we may have different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it, that Rachel Reeves is really profiting from this war, both at the petrol pumps and from these oil companies. I can't possibly let you go, Sam, without discussing the latest in the Gulf and the situation there as this deadline approaches. Is that being I saw the prices did rise a little bit today. What could we be looking at tomorrow? I mean, I know it's difficult to call because nobody can read Donald Trump's mind, but this is a real pitch point, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And there's a lot of uncertainty here as to what happens next. One thing is sure. I mean, we see destruction of infrastructure. We see destruction of refining capacity. We see destruction of logistical hubs, roads. And this all adds up to the misery that we are experiencing in terms of oil supply. So I think this is going to have effect on overall prices. But let's not forget that the oil prices have been relatively low, but we also have seen quite a big spread between the prices and the refined products. We hear about shortages in continental Europe at petrol stations. So, the reality is that this price of oil largely sort of reflects this changing dynamics. So in other words, we kind of received the mixed messages before the Easter break. We felt that, it's coming to an end. Now this is the reverse. So we actually see that there's scaling up of military operations. So that will definitely send a message to the market, and the markets will respond. But are we coming closer to this psychological barrier of 150? We don't know, but because it depends how long is it going to take. But what I would like your viewers to point out, to actually pay attention to, is the fact that this destruction continues, and this will take a long time to kind of bring it back to where we were before.
Yeah, I mean, some people are talking about years to sort of to fill those gaps again. The Karg Island as well was bombed by the military installations anyway, was bombed by America earlier on today as well. That could be a precursor, is being suggested, to boots on the ground. Just how important is Karg Island in terms of global oil?
It is very important because, during this crisis, what is quite interesting and perhaps less publicized by the media is the fact that Iranian oil continues to flow to the market, continues to be delivered to the market, obviously mostly to Asia, because, Middle East supplies mainly Asian markets, but that indeed has been quite helpful in a sense. But, Karg Island is the main export hub for Iranian crude. Up to 90% of oil is exported via this hub. Obviously, it doesn't mean, as some analysts point out, that the export capacity and the export capabilities of Iran will be curtailed entirely, because Iran has other options as well. But this will significantly, should this continue and should indeed this bring to a halt Karg Island's export capacities, then this will have an effect on Iran's ability to continue to export crude. And indeed, this most likely will have effects on the Asian markets, which so far as we know have been impacted already. We see what's happening in major importing countries in Asia.
The other concern, Sam, is that there are quite a few of these types of waterways. I mean, the Suez Canal we know of, there's quite a few of these waterways that if Iran does manage to keep control of the Strait of Hormuz, there is a real concern that this could be infectious, that this taking of these waterways. I know with the Suez Canal, there's already a toll that has to be paid to get boats through. They're talking about that on the Strait of Hormuz, 2 million we're hearing per tanker going through. I mean, this could become infectious, right? And that could hold the whole world to ransom on this.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the Panama Canal and the news that we are getting from there, obviously we don't know exactly the scale of the destruction, but the images have hit the headlines. Perhaps it's not as bad as it looks, but it is happening. And indeed, escalation brings retaliation. And this doesn't send a very good message to the world in terms of the prices. We are going to pay the premium for that. So we are going to pay for that one way or the other.
And the Red Sea, I just wanted to mention that quickly, because the Houthis, on the behest of Iran, are talking about disrupting movement there, which I believe adds up to another 6 to 10% of oil.
Yes, it's quite ironic, isn't it? Because Saudi Arabia has done its best to reroute a chunk of affected oil exports via the East-West pipeline to Yanbu. But at the same time, we know that how volatile this region is. And indeed, we're already hearing that the response could be imminent. So, in other words, these supplies cannot be taken for granted. There's up to 7 million barrels of oil that has been rerouted via this pipeline. I mean, going forward, obviously, there will be at some point a kind of a reality check about the dependence on the critical choke points, and we're probably going to see greater focus on expansion of infrastructure, and there will be a greater focus on transit pipelines. You're already hearing from some countries of the region that this should be happening in the future, or indeed this should have happened in the future, because obviously we always wonder what we could have done differently at times of crisis.
Yeah, the pipelines, it seems to be the future. It really does. It's good to talk to you again, Sam. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Sam Rajewski there, expert in international political economy of the energy from the University of East London. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and a reminder that coming up at the top of the hour is Andrew Hosken. He'll be here to go through the stories of the day and looking at the newspapers for tomorrow. Coming up at midnight, we're going to be heading off to the US to get the very latest, because we've still heard nothing about any form of back down or pivot or diplomatic solution to the crisis. The deadline of 1 o'clock our time is still very much in play for Donald Trump to wipe out an entire civilization. So we will be addressing that through the next few hours. I'm just looking at screens to see if there's any updates at all, but the only one we've got is the Wall Street Journal is saying that the Trump team is pushing to relocate Afghans who are trapped in limbo on a US Middle East base. We don't quite know what that means. It could be that they're trying to clear people from the base, expecting retaliations from Iran. It might not mean that at all. So at this stage, I'm afraid it is just guesswork, but it's an interesting line to have come out at this point. So we'll keep across that as well. In the meantime, it was in the papers yesterday, wasn't it? Sarah Ferguson is believed to have said that she will never go back to the US, fearing questions about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The former Duchess spent a lot of time in America in the past, promoting her business interests, but is keen to avoid further damage from her association with the convicted sex offender. She also doesn't want to answer questions about her ex-husband, I presume. Well, the former Duchess, 2 weeks ago, lawmakers from the States urged her to testify to Congress and give evidence to the Epstein investigation. Fergie is still on speaking terms, we believe, with her ex, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but apparently not talking that much. The former couple still living together at Royal Lodge until a few months ago, and he was offered a grace and favour property. She wasn't offered a royal property. And apparently she's been doing the posh version of sofa surfing with friends. But what does the future look like for the former Duchess? And will she ever be welcomed back into the public sphere? Well, Ingrid Seward joins me now, editor of Majesty magazine and a royal biographer. Ingrid, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. The mystery of Fergie, where is she?
I actually have no idea where she is. There's been all kinds of ideas where she might be. She's got a lot of friends. She's got a lot of rich and powerful friends as well. And I'm sure that one or two of them would be very happy to help her and help her keep right under the radar. But none of us know where she is.
I mean, it's extra. There were reports, weren't there, that she went to this, in Switzerland's £13,000 per day retreat.
Well, it sounds very Fergie and it sounds quite possible. But again, has anyone actually seen her? I mean, there were supposed sightings of her. But all of this and all the things she's also supposed to have said, we're only attributing to her. We don't really know. And I think that's probably been the best thing, that she hasn't been tempted, because normally she is tempted to say anything, and she really is keeping very, very quiet. Therefore, when you don't say anything, people kind of say things for you. So we don't really know if she will ever go back to America. People are saying she won't, but we don't know, because that was really, in a way, more her home than the UK was at one time. So it is a total mystery.
I mean, it really is. For somebody of such high profile to be able to keep such low profile is quite an act. But I mean, with sofa surfing, or the posh version of it, people will tire of that eventually. This cannot be her whole life from now on, surely.
I'm sure she's pretty miserable. I mean, she's apparently got no home. She's got, she must be all over the place, mentally. she is quite delicate mentally, in spite of the fact that she always puts on a brave front. So I'm sure she's in a terrible mess. And I think when somebody's like that, your friends do stick by you. And I think that that's been her lifeline, and will probably continue to be so until she comes up with a plan. And Fergie always comes up with plans of how to reinvent herself or how to reintroduce herself. And she's brave. And I just have never known anyone or ever heard of anyone that's been involved in so many scandals and yet has bounced back in the most extraordinary way.
I mean, you say she doesn't have a home, but there were reports where that one of her daughters bought her a house in somewhere very posh in London.
No, I think that house was purchased with money that was in trust for the daughters, which was given to Fergie, well, not given to Fergie, but put in trust for the daughters at the time of Fergie's divorce. I think Fergie got, according to the late Princess Diana, who did actually say Fergie never got enough money, but I don't think there's enough money in the world for Fergie. But she didn't get an enormous payoff, but she did get money put in trust to buy her daughters a home. And I think that's what the Muse has. She
yes, that's it. But I mean, her daughters are not poor, are they? I mean, they've married well. And could it be that they'll have to look after her in the future? Because, as you said, there's not enough money in the world for Fergie. She loves money. She's very good at spending it. And she's been, up until now, quite good at earning it, or at least asking other people to give it to her. But going forward, those taps are turning off now. I mean, how is she going to earn any money in the future?
I wish I knew, because it would be a miracle. But I think that her daughters, at least Beatrice, they will look after their mum. I can't imagine that those two girls who, they're a very loyal, close-knit family, I think they will definitely look after their mother. I think probably most families would. But at the moment, she's probably saying to them, no, please keep away from me, because, I don't want you to be tarnished by my problems as well. Which would be a motherly way of looking at it. Yeah. So I think that they are very decent girls, and they wouldn't want to see their mother slip right down the slippery slope.
And what about her relationship with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? They used to say they were the happiest divorced couple in the world, and now, of course, they're not living together. There's no plans for them to live together. Do you see that relationship continuing to be strong, or do you think that will collapse?
Well, I would have thought it might collapse, but if Fergie is very loyal, and that she's really all Andrew has, and I can't really think that she would totally desert him at this time. And if they really are the happiest, divorced couple, well, then, he needs her support. They need each other in a way. So I can't imagine that she's going to cut ties with him or vice versa. It just doesn't seem to make sense with the way that they've led their life up to now.
But how long do you think Fergie will ever be forgiven? I mean, you said she's always bounced back. She's very brave. There was talk about her planning a comeback to public life, but I'm not sure how far the public would support that.
Well, I think this Epstein thing has very, very long and poisonous tentacles, and I think this is a very serious issue, and it's not going to go away. And as long as she is tarnished by the association, I don't think she will be able to reinvent herself. I think somehow or other something has to happen, and I don't know what that would be, but she's got to get rid of that Epstein connection. Maybe she will, Fergie, it's quite possible she'll sort of suddenly become friends with all the victims and try and help them. And I mean, you just don't know. Something like that could get her out of a difficult situation.
I was thinking the same thing, Ingrid. I thought that would be the only real way that she could do it, but I wonder if we would see that as a cynical move.
I'm sure we would see it as a cynical move, but she is the sort of person that could possibly do that. And Andrew couldn't. I just don't think it's in him, but it is in Fergie. And I mean, that would be her way out of the situation, but she wouldn't have to frame it like that because it would look like she was then using these unfortunate women.
Yeah.
So it's very delicate. I don't know, but anyhow, we'll just have to see.
Wait and see.
I'm glad you agree with me.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I've been thinking that, and Ingrid, I think that you can never count her out either. So we'll wait and see what her future holds. But I wouldn't be surprised if she managed some form of comeback at all. Ingrid, lovely to talk to you. A real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Ingrid Seward, the editor of Majesty magazine and a royal biographer. Right, coming up, we're going to be going through the papers and, of course, keeping a really tight eye on any messaging that we get from Pakistan, Iran, or Washington on this deadline, which is fast approaching. There's 2 more hours now till 1 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, which of course is the deadline that Donald Trump has set. He first of all set 48 hours, didn't he? And then he set 5 days, and then he extended that to 10 days, and now he extended it again from yesterday to today, and at 1 o'clock. So it's 2 hours basically now until he threatened to say that he said an entire civilization will die tonight. Those were the words that he used. So in the meantime, women and children have been forming human shields around bridges and civilian infrastructure in Iran. It is, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, in my head, cannot see how this is possible. I just can't see how it's possible. But yeah, and yet Donald Trump continues to surprise me, not in a good way, but you know, with other things that he's done and doing. You just think, how is that even possible? So, you know, every fibre of me is saying no. There will be an there'll be something that will happen, and Pakistan are trying their very best. But some of the latest lines, like I said, we are keeping an eye around the world with what just little movements that are happening. One of them, like we said, is the Trump regime trying to move people out of a US airbase in the Middle East. Qatar's education ministry says it's going to implement extended weekend holidays for students effective Wednesday until the end of the week as part of a precautionary approach. Egypt's foreign minister and Pakistani counterpart discussed regional developments and coordination of joint efforts for regional de-escalation. The Egyptian foreign ministry has said it in a statement. So there's very, very little coming through. The White House has said that Trump is aware of the Pakistan proposal, which is a 2-week ceasefire from everybody. I don't know whether Israel will agree to that. Don't forget, Israel are involved in this as well. They're asking that the Strait of Hormuz be opened for all shipping during that 2-week ceasefire, which so far Iran have said that they're not interested in doing. So I don't know where the off-ramp is, but I can't believe there isn't one at this stage. So we're going to be discussing that at midnight, because if it's not switched off, if it's stopped, then that will be an hour countdown to what Trump is saying he will do to Iran. So we will be addressing that. We're talking to some people in that hour, but I'd also like to hear from you as to what you make of this, particularly if you are Iranian or you've got friends in Iran, how you must be feeling right now. I know it's almost impossible to get voices out of Iran at the moment because of the internet blackout and all of those things, but I'm sure you'll have a view on what's happening. So please do give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, here with me in the studio now to discuss this and, of course, a look ahead to the papers for tomorrow. Many of the papers, of course, are put to bed way before 1 o'clock. So it's mostly obviously speculation, but we will be addressing that anyway. It's Andrew Hosken, author, journalist, former BBC senior correspondent. And for those of you who are interested in the surname, yes, he is my brother. Let us have a look. Hello, by the way.
Hello, good
to see you. Let's start with the Daily Mail, actually, because it is a very powerful headline on the front page of the Daily Mail. Night the world held its breath and prayed. This is a big moment, isn't it?
Well, of course it is in a way. I mean, this is now sort of the umpteenth threat that Donald Trump has made against Iran, having said he's obliterated it and having said he was going to take it back to Stone Ages. He's been making these sort of extreme threats since March 21st. I think was the first time he actually sort of came out and said something as extreme as this. I mean, this is a very extreme thing to say. I mean, no, it's difficult.
An entire civilization will die tonight. I mean, what is that?
It's extreme, and if you look at some of the people who used to support it and what they're saying about it, I mean, you look at people like sort of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was in Congress, who was very, very MAGA, very big supporter of Donald Trump, said it showed that he had gone nuts and that...
She's calling for the 25th Amendment, isn't she? She's asking for him to be
which
impeached.
is the amendment to the Constitution which would allow the Cabinet to suggest that an unsound president be removed, and that would then, I'm not sure because no one's ever done it before or even suggested it before Trump, that is. And then, of course, it will be up to Congress and the Senate to decide. Of course, the Republican Party is this sort of become this sort of pathetic puppet of Donald Trump. And
I mean,
it doesn't seem to doesn't matter what he says or does. They sort of go along with it.
It really is quite. It's so interesting to watch that the Constitution it was clearly not robust enough to protect it against somebody who willfully disregards it.
The founding fathers, George Washington and John Adams and all the rest of it, back in the late 1700s, they thought when they were drawing up the Constitution, they thought, well, what if a complete nut job comes along and becomes president? So they built all these safeguards into the Constitution, and it's been subsequently amended it. So, for example, Later it was amended to limit the number of terms that the president could hold to 2 terms, despite the fact the only president before then who had done more than 2 terms was FDR, one of the greatest, Roosevelt, one of the greatest US presidents ever, who died shortly after winning his 4th term. But despite that, they brought it in because they thought that someone shouldn't be in the job, this kind of powerful position too long. So it has amended it. Unfortunately, what they didn't put, what no one foresaw was somebody coming along just ignoring the Constitution.
Well, that's what I mean by the legal framework of it. It seems to have been based on honour in a way, that it would be a good person that would be who wouldn't just ignore it. Because how can you just ignore it?
Well, it was based on three things being the America being sort of having these 3 massive pillars. The judiciary was the independent judiciary, as we have. The Congress and the Senate, and the President being 3, and that all has to work properly for America to work properly. Well, of course, the problem is that he's sort of completely magnified the Republican Party. There's not a single senator or Congress person, man or woman, in either house who, if they said anything against him, would be, voted out and lose their position and all the rest of it. So they're all in terror. So the Parliament, Congress, has collapsed in a sense, apart from the Democrats. It can't work because it's become too fearful of Donald Trump. And the longer it's gone on, the more things the longer they've sort of acquiesced, or the self-castrating eunuchs of the Republican Party in the Senate, the more the deeper they've got, the deeper they are, and it's sort of like an Oedipus complex. They can't sort of go back on it now. They can't sort of say, well, actually, I've gone this far, but I'm not going to go any further. So it's a very difficult, very dangerous position, because you have somebody who is acknowledged and considered to be very unstable in charge of the most powerful country in the world, and yet no one in that country can hold him to account properly. And this is why he's so terrified about the forthcoming midterm elections in November, because he thinks, well, goodness me, if he loses control of Congress, his life is going to be very difficult. If he loses control of the Senate as well, and the polls are looking very bad for him. Very bad indeed.
Well, that depends if there's a free and fair election.
Well, he's trying to, as you know, he's trying to change. He's trying to make it almost impossible to vote in the election. With this so-called Save America Act, Save Act. But going back to this, I mean, who would ever anticipate this sort of a paper like the Daily Mail with its history, sort of saying the night that the world held its breath and prayed, praying that the American president isn't going to do something nuts, like try and wipe out an entire civilization, whatever that means. And what does it mean? And it's very interesting, isn't it, that only a few days ago he fired these 3 generals, including the chief of staff, General Randy George. And one wonders if he'd been getting them or asking them to do things they were very unhappy with, and they had to get rid of them. Well,
that's the suggestion, isn't it? That actually, because I was talking to a specialist earlier on about war crimes, and that the American, all soldiers actually, after the Second World War, I was just following orders is not a reasonable excuse to commit a war crime. And there is some suggestion that there were senior generals in JAG, well, they got rid of most of the guys from JAG, didn't they? But talking about that they're not prepared to commit war crimes, and therefore they were sacked.
Yes, it's absolutely possible. I mean, at Nuremberg, they hanged generals, people like General Jodl and so on, who they were hanged. They were the most serious senior criminals that were hanged at Nuremberg. And as you say, simply obeying orders, it wasn't a defence when you're committing crimes. I mean, the problem with this war as well, of course, is that he hasn't got congressional approval for it.
No. Well, it's not a war, is it? It's an excursion.
Yes, they're saying it's not a war. Of course, he keeps on slipping up, as he does with everything, comparing it to other wars, as he did a couple of days ago. So boasting that it hadn't gone on as long as the Vietnam War or World War II, or America's involvement in World War II, which was half the length of actual World War II. If you don't include the Japanese attack on China, which preceded, Poland and all the rest of it. So the military, there is clearly a great deal of unhappiness in the military. and people being fired is not a sign of a war that's going well. You do not fire generals
during a war.
You do. I mean, Churchill fired generals when things went badly during wars. I mean, he famously went through whole loads of generals, particularly in the desert. And then he finally came up with one who could win battles with General Montgomery. But so you don't fire generals when the war's going well. That seems to be the rule, because if a general is winning a war for you, the last thing you should do is fire them. So, but it seems to be an unwinnable war, doesn't it? I mean, this is the problem.
Yeah.
We can't win a war.
Well, we don't know what the goal is. The win would be. What is the win? Regime change, because that hasn't changed, despite Trump saying we've now got a completely different regime in place.
Well, the question is, the question to Donald Trump, I would say, well, if we had changed the regime, why are you still bombing the country?
Yeah.
Because if regime change was an objective, although he never said what the objectives were. If an objective was regime change, and he's boasting that they have changed the regime, then why are they still bombing Iran?
Well, and also the obliteration of the nuclear stuff, and apparently that's now buried and can't be got at anyway.
It's a sort of mad woman's breakfast of a war, and his thinking and muddled thinking. He's probably the most incompetent, head of state America's ever had. I mean, everyone says that about him. He's incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing. He keeps on blustering, and it's a bit like sort of King Lear. I shall do such terrible things what they are. They shall be the terrors of the earth. But of course, Shakespeare was portraying somebody who was impotent, who was coming out with these things because he couldn't get his way.
Yeah.
Well,
that's Trump, isn't it? He's not getting his way with Iran.
So part of this, I'm going to wipe out this civilization. Part of it I get a little bit is sort of bat squeak of desperation and terror, that it ain't going the way he wanted to, and the Iranians aren't doing what, after having bombed them to bits, aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is surrendering. I mean, don't forget, he was demanding unconditional surrender. Well, unconditional surrender, we all know what that means. It means, the
Trump
Americans...
gets the oil.
Well, we know what it meant in World War II, because they sailed the American Navy sailed into Tokyo Harbour, and they trotted up all the emperor's, representatives, and forced them to sign an instrument of unconditional surrender, and filmed it, and then occupied Japan and ran it.
Yeah.
And introduced baseball into Japan and all the rest of it. So we know what unconditional surrender meant, and the same happened in Germany. We occupied Germany. They signed, the generals that were left...
We divvied it out.
Yeah, so that hasn't happened in Iran. They're in control of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the question that they're going to have to ask themselves: if you bomb them, you destroy their civilization, does it still mean they keep hold of the Strait of Hormuz? If the answer to that is yes, probably they will still, despite getting rid of their civilization, whatever that means. I mean, does it also mean sort of bombing the ruins of Persepolis, which was the ancient ruins of Persia?
Yeah.
That is part of the civilization. I mean, it goes back 5,000 years. Not as long as America's, of course, which only goes back a few hundred years. But so it was a stupid, deranged thing to say. If it doesn't achieve wiping out the civilization and
and clearing the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, it's not achievable. I mean, that's what all. I don't want to sound like I'm an armchair general, although I'm sitting in a very nice armchair. But I'm just saying that the geography is in favour of the Iranians.
It is absolutely, and also they've been preparing for this for 40 odd years, right? So they've got things buried underground. They've got. I mean, and
it's a vast country.
Yeah, it's a vast country. It dwarfs Iraq. And look what it took to well, he didn't really do anything in Iraq, but you know what I mean? The numbers of people, 230,000 soldiers or so. But
it was more, that was about half a million to occupy the country.
Yeah,
and of course it was an absolute quagmire to end all quagmires.
Yeah, and you look at the size of Iran, and they've got tunnels, and they've got, and every time that Donald Trump says, oh, we've annihilated their air defences, and then an F-35 gets shot down.
Look at the trouble the Israelis have gone to. This devastation in Gaza. Yeah. They bombed the place. They've killed possibly 100,000 people. The whole thing is a complete catastrophe. I mean, it looks like Armageddon, which isn't very far away, and literally Armageddon, and yet Hamas are still there. And this is a place that's like 40 miles coastline, only a few miles deep. And I've been there. It's a tiny place. I mean, Iran's a massive, huge place, the size of Western Europe. they would need 1 million. To occupy Japan, they were talking about. That's why they dropped the bomb. They thought, well, we're going to need 2 million people to invade Japan in 1944, 1945. In Iran, you're talking about those sorts of things. You're talking about 1 million guy, being there. They couldn't hold Afghanistan. They couldn't hold Iraq.
No.
It's just not, and they don't have any troops to do that. I mean, I suppose there's a possibility they could hold a sort of limited military operation, to take one of the islands, but okay, well, what would that achieve?
Well, they were bombing Karg today, weren't they? At the same time as talking peace.
Yes, but Karg Island is 400 miles away from Strait of
Hormuz. Yeah.
So it's difficult. They don't see the original thing, which the whole thing was supposed to collapse like a bad souffle overnight, hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So they are kind of making it up as they go along. And as I say, that I think the guy's just desperate because, but. Of course, it's such a bad thing to come out with because people are saying, well, this sounds like genocide. Some people have been saying
genocidal language,
this is nuts, this is mad, and all the rest of it, which of course it is. And you've got the Daily Mail saying, well, we should all pray because of the president in the White House.
Yeah, and they're calling him unhinged as well.
It's incredible, really.
It is, but how can I don't know who can back this right now, but people do. Before we go to a break, Alison has said, I can see why your brother is clever and intelligent. It's because all that you have taught him. Thank you, Alison, for recognising that. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Still no news. No real news coming out of Washington as we approach that deadline. Iraq's interior minister says that 2 people were killed after a projectile hit a house in Baghdad. So we're just pulling out all the latest lines for you. The UN Secretary General has appeared to warn the US that no military aim justifies the wholesale destruction of a country. Antonio Guterres did not name Donald Trump, but it comes after this morning's threat on Truth Social. He wrote, there is no military objective that justifies the wholesale destruction of a society's infrastructure or the deliberate infliction of suffering on civilian populations. Guterres previously seemed to suggest that an escalation in the US war in Iran could violate international law, except that Donald Trump doesn't care about international law. And that's the thing, Andrew, isn't it? That he has already said he's already put sanctions against the ICC. He's not interested in the International Criminal Courts. He's not interested in the Geneva Convention. He's not interested in any of that. He doesn't care.
Well, I mean, this is the guy who tried to overturn the election in his own country and incited people
Allegedly.
to... Well, he did. I mean, it was a fact that he said that it was that the election had been fixed, and
that's true. He still says it. Actually,
he still says it, and he encouraged people to go to the Hill and hold that right.
He said he would join them,
and that so that's all established. So this is the kind of guy. He doesn't seem to care very much about international law or domestic law. I mean, it's one of the most openly corrupt administrations in history. I mean, anywhere. I mean, it's like something out of Africa.
You've got Pete Hegseth buying into defence stocks.
It's just the whole thing is just so extraordinary. It's going to take America decades to get over it. I mean, the thing is, the other question we're talking, before the break, the other thing is, would bombing them back to the Stone Age or wiping out the civilization make a difference at the pumps in America? You see, more chaos is only going to put the oil price up. It's already at $117 a barrel. If it goes to 2 or 3, I mean, you could forget about the midterms. I mean, don't forget, he used to boast.
It's a psychological number as well for Americans.
Well, it's not only the price. I mean, as you know, petrol prices in America are incredibly low compared to ours. And they're half the price, really, than what we pay. But because it's a big country, people like to drive around. They're very car orientated people. So, but that was also going to feed into food prices, fertilizer prices, all the rest of it. So that is, bombing is destroying their civilization going to make any difference? I mean, what happens if they've destroyed the civilization and the shells and missiles keep on popping over, which they will? Because you can't. It's not possible to destroy a country the size of Iran.
From the air.
It's just not possible.
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget, America did that to Japan, but Japan was mainly made of wood, and most of the cities were very easy to find because they were on the coast. So Tokyo, for example, I mean, they killed 100,000 people in one night, just firebombing. I mean, forget about it. I mean, by the time they came to dropping the 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, most of Japan had been completely destroyed by that time anyway, but people were still fighting. So and look what happened to Britain and London in the war. I mean, they bombed all our major cities. It made people really angry. And already you're seeing, say on the Daily Mail, you've got these rings of people protecting, power sites and bridges and so on. So, and these people, a lot of them, unless they're sort of party stooges, have been told to do it, well, probably, when people are threatening your civilization and you might think, well, I hate the regime, they are a bunch of absolute gangsters and they murdered people I know, but, the bigger threat is now Donald Trump and America.
So it pulls people together.
That is the danger. That is the risk he's taking, and has taken. And all this talk about obliterating the country and bombing them back to the Stone Age. I mean, you just put yourself in their position.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not the talk of somebody who wants to find a peaceful exit. That's for sure.
No, and here we have the Times. US, we won't use nuclear bombs, says J.D. Vance.
He hinted, didn't he? He's in Hungary supporting Orbán for the elections, the upcoming elections, and he was saying things like, "We've got weapons we haven't even used yet, but they're at the behest of the president to use them." And somebody asked if that was nuclear weapons, and I don't think it was wholly denied, but it wasn't confirmed.
If they used nuclear weapons, that would be that'd be the end for them. I think definitely they wouldn't. They might threaten it, which is stupid as well. But I mean, if they used the nuke, that would be very, very bad.
They can't, can they?
There'd be a crash. There'd be a big stock market crash, which is of course the thing that Trump fears more than anything else. I mean, the other extraordinary thing, of course.
But why do they have to say we won't use them? I mean, you wouldn't even expect.
Well, I suppose it might be just a bit of to keep the markets a bit more buoyant. I mean, there's been a lot of insider dealing allegedly going with all behind and in front of all these announcements. So people playing the system, hoping that Trump will say something nuts and then backtrack on it, so the markets go up and down. So there has been alleged a large extent of a large degree of market manipulation around all of this as well. But I mean, the fact that they have to say we won't use nuclear bombs,
I mean, it's shocking
just goes to show. And also, I mean, the other thing is JD Vance is in Hungary supporting the re-election, for the fifth time, of Orban. The other person who's desperate for Orban, Viktor Orban, to remain as Prime Minister of Hungary, of course, is Putin, whose apparatchiks have been plotting with apparently with Fidesz officials, which is the party run by Orban.
Well, Orban blocks anything to help Ukraine,
to fake assassinations, to keep him in power. I mean, he's incredibly unpopular. I mean, he's ruined Hungary. He's turned it into an authoritarian state. There's no free media. It's gone from being one of the wealthiest countries in the EU under him to being one of the poorest and certainly the most corrupt. And the idea that the Americans are there, and of course very pro-Russia and very pro-Putin, Fidesz, the idea that JD Vance is in Hungary disporting himself and making an absolute fool of himself.
Vice president.
When even the Hungarian people don't want either of them, to be honest, is incredible. But the fact that he has to sort of come out and say, well, we won't use nukes, but we might use something else in our toolbox.
But this is what the people are looking at now. Is he said, we've got tools in our toolbox that so far we haven't decided to use. Trump can decide to use them. He will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course. And the US military has already used most of the weapons in its conventional arsenal, calling into question what on earth Vance could be referring to. So I think he was referring to nuclear. I think Vance was referring to it.
Well, he might have been sort of
hinting at it.
Well, it's a bit like the sort of the threats to use ground troops. It may have been a way of sort of bullying and applying pressure on the Iranians to give them a deal. But of course, the Iranians are saying, well, look, we don't trust you because you've gone back on your word with all these negotiations. We want Congress to underpin any agreement we have with Donald Trump, because the guy is not to be trusted. He's unstable, and he's always having negotiation with us and then breaking his word and bombing us. So why on earth would anyone sign a deal with Donald Trump?
Well, he's torn up most deals, hasn't he? I mean, all the tariff deals as well across the world. He's torn all of those up. He's torn up agreements with the WHO. He's torn up, and the original Obama agreement with Iran. Of course, he destroyed
the JPOC.
So you couldn't, you wouldn't trust him. I was talking yesterday to a guy who's been in, who was in business with him for 15 years, and he was saying, look, it's not something that I can, it is not going to work doing any deal with him because he doesn't stick to anything. So it is true that you'd have to see, and they want completely promises that there will be no more bombing on Iran, and I don't.
They want to. Sorry, I dropped my microphone. They want, of course, they want assurances that the America is not America and Israel. Don't forget Israel are there. We'll stop bombing them. That's what they want, and I don't think they're going to get that. I don't think Donald Trump is going to get, the control of the Strait of Hormuz, because it's not achievable. So
the Strait of Trump, he called it the other day.
Yes.
And he also says, well, he's the winner of the war, so he should be charging tolls.
Or Gulf of America. Well, it's the Persian Gulf. You could call it Gulf of America 2, because he renamed the Gulf of Mexico.
I refuse to call the Gulf of
well, so did the Associated Press. Of course, they were thrown out of the White House as a result. It's just the whole thing is beyond absurd. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It was a terrible. This is the whole thing. The last year since Trump has got into White House has been a never-ending crisis for the world. He's destroying NATO. He's threatening to invade NATO countries. He's throwing these tariffs around, threatening the economies. All over. He's an absolute menace. I mean, he's caused the chaos and insecurity.
I haven't rested. I haven't had a good night's sleep since he came into power.
I don't think anyone has.
I really haven't, because you're always waking up. I mean, certainly the first 100 days, you're waking up going, "What's he done today? What's new? What's he done?" And in fact, for the last, well, it's every day. What's he done today? If
you're the Prime Minister of Britain, you're the President of France. How can you?
You can't figure out
how can you? You've just got to get on with it, and just you can't persuade him to do anything. You can't predict what he's going to do. I mean, here we are, an hour away or so. And will he sort of launch this sort of absolute devastating attack to destroy Iran or not?
I know, I can't even believe that we're here.
It's absolutely absurd, but for the world to be in this position.
Yeah, we just don't know.
And also that America has ceded all power to this very unstable, unwise human being. There is no senior politicians around them. I mean, don't forget during Nixon, when the Nixon was a Republican president, the Watergate scandal, it was the Republican Party that told him to go in the end as well.
Yeah.
So, but there is no one like that. There's no what. There's
it was the cover-up that got him, wasn't it? Not the actual crime.
Yes, it was the cover-up. Yeah.
But still, I mean, you're right. It just seems that this is the worst combination of all things, really, to happen to America all at one time. Extraordinary. But as you say, we're less than an hour and a half away from this deadline, and we absolutely do not have a clue what's going to happen next, except for we're going to have a quick break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, sorry. Hello there, it is Petrie here with you on Talk. I'm just reading the latest lines. Trump has agreed to suspend bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This was a suggestion from Pakistan. He says that this will be a double-sided ceasefire. Again, we don't know the details of that. We'll try and get details more on that. He said, we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran. A 2-week period will follow the agreement to be finalised and consummated. Did he mean that? Is that what he said? Yeah. We are very far along with definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran. So that's coming out of the White House. So there is a suspension to the bombing and the attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. He's just published it on Truth Social as well, which is funny because Millie sent me this message about 14 minutes ago saying markets bouncing, watch out for Truth Social. Imagine some good news hopefully soon. That was from Millie. I mean, that is good news, but what do we believe about the depth of the proposal? Because he isn't in direct talks with anybody in Iran. Pakistan is acting as mediator.
Yeah, these indirect talks, haven't they, including so Pakistan, Turkey and Egypt, I think the other two parties to it. Yeah, well, he's TACO'd, isn't he?
Yeah.
As they say, which stands, of course, TACO stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. You've got to look at it from what it sounds like. It sounds like a strategic victory for Iran, to be honest. There's no sign that they've given up the control of the Strait of Hormuz. Which
that's what I was looking for, that line actually. Have they agreed to free flow the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, that's not clear, is it, from the statement? and I suppose a ceasefire would include them not attacking ships as well that go through the Strait of Hormuz. Whether that will
But there's no mention of Israel either. Don't forget Israel is part of this as well.
I think, well, Israel will do what they're told by America.
Will they?
There's no doubt about that. Yeah, you bet. I mean, because they get all their money and arms from America. So if Bibi Netanyahu was told to stop bombing Iran, he would do as he's told. And despite all his rich, powerful friends in America telling Trump what to do, so I think it is, as you say. Of course, the opening the Strait of Hormuz wasn't a war objective because the Strait of Hormuz was happily open before Trump.
Well, I've got the Truth Social here. There seems to be a problem with your microphone. I don't quite know what it is. Oh, it's the connection, is it? We'll get you another mic, don't worry. Okay. So this is from Truth Social. Donald Trump says, based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Azim Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, and a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalised and consummated on behalf of the United States of America as President, and also representing the countries of the Middle East. It is an honour to have this long-term problem close to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So that's a very long Truth Social there, but he said subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to. So I'm not sure whether that has been agreed or not. Still not sure.
It sounds like it's been substantively agreed by
Do you
Iran.
think?
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me. Although of course they haven't issued any statement. It's just him doing his. I don't know why he doesn't use the press office. He's got a very well. He keeps on putting stuff out himself as if he doesn't have his own press office. Yes, it depends what Iran's saying. I mean, of course, Iran will certainly want surety and guarantees that anything that's agreed by America will be held and will. I mean, for example, if there is an insistence that Congress underpins any agreement, that may be trouble for Trump, because Trump doesn't like to have to listen to Congress, thinks he can run America without them. So if he's forced to sort of listen to his parliamentarians, the Congress, he may buckle at that. But if it gets him off the hook, which this sounds like he wants desperately off the hook, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's why his sort of squeals of anguish are becoming more and more violent and vitriolic, with this ultimate one of destroying a civilization. It sounds to me, well, what does he want out of it? He wants to get off the hook. He doesn't want to be in this
But of course, this is displayed as a win for Donald Trump.
Of course he will, yes.
And he's saying that he's representing the countries of the Middle East. I wonder if he's actually been given the right to represent the countries of the Middle East. But he said it's an honour to have this long-term problem close to resolution. But he would, of course, MAGA will say this is because of his tough man attitude. And, that bullying, if I'm going to punch you twice as hard as you can punch me, has worked for him.
Well, of course, both sides are going to put the spin on it. But, if you step back objectively and think, well, what has America got out of this, apart from rocketing up prices and high pump prices and its international reputation trashed? What's it got out of all this except the status quo of the Strait of Hormuz as it was before he attacked them, and the regime is still there. So basically what he's done is...
But again, he will trumpet the fact that he has managed to get the Strait of Hormuz opened, even though it was him that closed it.
Well, yes, he of course he will. He'll set it hard, but you know, looking back, you think, well, all you've done is you've replaced Ayatollah. You know, you've replaced one 86-year-old Ayatollah with a 56-year-old Ayatollah in charge of the same horrible, sinister regime. That's not who will now be hell bent on building a nuke.
Yeah.
And there's no sign that they've actually taken out all of their nuclear material making facilities in Iran, and I don't think they have, despite his claims last year to have completely obliterated their sort of nuclear machine. That seems to be highly unlikely in the mid to long term, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what has been achieved by this war, except the damage to the international economy, high petrol prices, America's reputation in tatters as a result, a more unstable world. Russia's had its oil sanctions lifted. It's pumping more money into the Russian war-making machine, the illegal war against the war-making machine that's being used against Ukraine. And what has he achieved from it all? I mean, of course he's going to put a lot of spin on it. He does that with everything because he can never admit he's wrong about anything.
No, and he'll also claim that he stopped another war. He'll say that this
yes,
is...
well,
yeah. If you start one...
Well, on that basis, I suppose he stopped the US versus Greenland war as well, because he did invade Greenland. So yes, on that basis, you can start and stop wars, you know, at your will. But I don't think it's going to get him any closer to the Nobel Peace Prize, if I was a betting man.
No, I'm not sure about that either. But of course, the paper's now well behind the curve on this story, but by nature of what they do. But the Mirror, an extraordinary glimpse of Earth from the Orion spacecraft after a journey that represents the very best of humanity. Yet our precious home continues to be torn apart by the worst of it, and as a maniac in the White House threatens to obliterate a whole civilization, the world holds its breath. Extraordinary image.
It's a beautiful... I remember as a tiny person being, you know, pulled down the stairs in July 1969 to watch, you know, Neil Armstrong step out of the lunar module onto the moon, first man on the moon. I just about remember the fuzzy people banging the TV. The usual thing, the goldfish, you know, rocketing around its bowl, because I'm very old, absolutely. So, I mean, in sort of 55 years, it's a bit sort of, well, why haven't we done anything further? And it's funny because the latest headline is that the Artemis 2, the rocket that the Americans have sent to go sort of past the moon and back again, essentially. They've gone 252,000 miles, which is farther, you know, to boldly go where...
And no man or woman
well, boldly go where actually men have been before, but not quite as far.
Yeah.
And previously, I didn't know that actually the furthest people to travel from Earth was the failed moon mission Apollo 13.
Apollo 13,
because, you know, which was an incredible story. But of course they took off, supposedly going to the moon. They didn't get any because the things went wrong in the spaceship and they had to come back. And it's an incredible story, you know. Great movie, fantastic movie, which tells this story. But they went further than anyone else, so they did achieve something.
They did,
if not to step foot on the moon. But
they achieved coming back.
But their record's been broken now. But
yeah, I mean, it's been very exciting. It was on this show that we had the launch, and then again on this show when they went around to the dark side of the moon, or the far side of the moon, more accurately stated. And unfortunately, we're not on air for when they re-enter, which is a shame.
I know, but I mean, the Mirror makes the point is, well, you know, we're making a complete hash of everything on this beautiful planet.
I know.
I mean, these places. I mean, Zoe Williams in The Guardian was saying, well, it's the problem that she had with space travel is that you travel from this gorgeous planet Earth and you rock up to these places, there's no one there, not even little green men. It's just nothing, not even air to breathe, and quite boring after a while, I'd imagine. You go to Mars and we sort of know what Mars looks like and what there's nothing much there.
No.
And after you think, well, great, you know, after a few hours you might think, well, actually I wouldn't mind going back to Shepherd's Bush.
There's no Starbucks. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But still, you get these fabulous pictures of our own beautiful planet from
I know
space.
that we're absolutely messing up.
Absolutely.
We've got to take a break, but we'll be back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me, Andrew Hosken, author and journalist, former BBC senior correspondent, going through the papers. A lot of the papers, as we just said, are now right behind the curve of the news, because things have moved on. If you've just joined me, there is now a 2-week reprieve on Iran. Donald Trump has agreed to a ceasefire. He's agreed to suspend bombing for 2 weeks. So the 1 o'clock deadline has been replaced now with one of 2 weeks. So many of the newspapers, of course, not being able to reflect that. But let's have a look at the FT, because the stories they have got on the front are pretty good, pretty interesting stories. An exodus from the UAE, Andrew.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And there was about 240,000 Brits. I think that's 240,000 Brits in the UAE, which is the UAE is a sort of conglomeration of 7 emirates, the United Arab Emirates. So like Dubai is one, and the main one, and there's all the rest of it. But so there were 240,000 there, and now 30,000 have left since the conflict started. So that's more than 10%, which is huge. That is an exodus. That really is a lot, and that must be really damaging. The economy as well of Dubai. Of course, they'll have to come back and start paying tax. Yeah. But that's, sorry, a bit of a cheap shot. But nevertheless, it goes to show the kind of instability that this war has created throughout this region, because, of course, the UAE, along with these other countries like Qatar, Bahrain, all the rest of it, that part of Saudi Arabia they're on the Persian Gulf, they're facing Iran. They've been really getting it. They're very vulnerable to being attacks to Iran. The attacks to Iran have been very effective on Bahrain. I mean, the King Fahd Causeway Bridge, which links Saudi Arabia to Bahrain, was closed today. That's an extraordinary, because they were worried that if Trump and the Israelis had smashed all these bridges in Iran, well, that would go, and that would cut Bahrain off from cut the island of Bahrain off from the Arab Peninsula. It would have been devastating to the economy of Bahrain, who suffered a lot as a result of this. So you can see these numbers are actually the concrete evidence of the damage that the war has done to the region.
But presumably many of them would choose to go back, would they?
Possibly.
Maybe it's just temporary.
Possibly
that they've done
not.
that.
Well, not if they think, well, in 2 weeks' time, it could start again if Trump, wakes up on the wrong side of the bed or whatever, or someone annoys him, and then if you're right, okay, the Iranians annoy him. I mean, and we're back to square one. Like snakes and ladders. Yeah. Down the slippery snake, back down to number 0. So, but nevertheless, it does show, the FT here that people are very, they're actually, despite the no tax regime in UAE, they'd rather take the financial hit, get back to the
UK, where it's a bit safer.
Where it's safer.
Hedge fund ramps up wagers against European stocks as the war casts a shadow, and this is because we're particularly exposed, or the Europeans are particularly exposed to this energy crisis.
Well, again, wages as opposed to wages against European stocks. So these are short positions, which is basically
gambling on the market.
All these city gamblers, these hucksters who control the markets are basically, just about to dump European stocks to make loads of money on the suffering that these stocks are going to have as a result of this war and continuing war. So it also goes to show the instability again. These two stories are linked because it shows...
You always follow the money. Always follow the money. When I was working at Deutsche Welle on their finance desk, every story came back to the stock markets and to money. Every single story.
They're very fickle, the stock markets, and they're very,
they will always look after themselves. So you know what's going to happen in the world. As
people
Millie
dump
said,
stocks,
when you
buy some stocks. They particularly, again, along with these allegations, there have been of insider dealing, of all this instability, this up and downness of the Trump regime, has also led to this volatility and instability in the markets.
Yeah, it really has. What about HMS Dragon back in port? This is a bit embarrassing, isn't it? It's something wrong with the toilet.
Poor old HMS Dragon. These papers love to kick because it's a way of sort of getting at Trump. When you think, well, okay, well, if you wanted a big Royal Navy, then okay, what are we going to cut to pay for it?
Yeah.
So anyway, this Type 45 frigate, or whatever it is, has had a technical problem in there. But it's still in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah, they said they still can fire their guns, but I just think that their toilets aren't working or something.
Okay, well, I mean that's fine. Well, they're going to be the ship apparently is remaining in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is where Cyprus is. It was our RAF was shooting down the pathetic drones that were lobbed over from Lebanon by Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't the HMS Dragon. Also, Trump was attacking our allegedly rubbish aircraft carriers. So well, there it is. I mean, I don't know, but it seems to be a sort of the Daily Telegraph sort of loves to have a go at. That following HMS Dragon around as if that was a sort of a token of Britain's feebleness.
Well, it is. It is a bit.
Well, we are not a first-rate power. We don't have an empire. We don't need a Royal Navy that controls an empire.
Not anymore.
And also we don't have the money.
But you're right. I mean, there's no point knocking it.
We have two aircraft carriers. I remember being on HMS Ark Royal.
I went on to Invincible.
Gulf, yeah. And you think, well, that's quite a big boat, and I was there for a week or so, and then you see this massive floating island, which is the American aircraft carriers, which are about 4 times the size. I mean, they're small towns. And of course, they were dry, so the American officers would, if they wanted to have a drink, would fly over to the Ark Royal on a helicopter, get a bit plastered, sleep the night, and then go back to their own aircraft carriers. But the Royal Navy did have a function in those days, if only to sort of
they're very generous with their
drinks.
Booze.
They're wonderful. Royal Navy's wonderful people.
I agree.
But nevertheless, yes. So this sort of trying to sort of create a soap opera out of the travails of HMS Dragon, which is just this frigate that's just, it's had some technical problems, it'll be fixed, and then it'll be still in the Eastern Mediterranean. So I'm not that excited about it, I'm afraid.
No. What about Kanye West? No can do.
Yeah.
The Sun newspaper reflecting that he's banned from the UK. Government finally acts on the rapper. He put down his sudden love of Hitler and all things Nazi to bipolar. But now the festival has been axed.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know about you, but I just, in this current climate, there is a sort of thing that words don't appear to have any consequences. So people come out with the most outrageous statements, racist statements, anti-Semitic statements, stupid, idiotic things. I mean, the like of which we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So I paraphrase Trump, as he's constantly saying. But Kanye West, I'm afraid I don't know his tunes. I know he's a rapper.
Yeah,
if you can call it a tune. But
can't imagine you bopping along to a Kanye.
Not really. It's not my kind of my bag. But he really did, go out on a limb to offend everyone he could think about. I mean, he sort of had suggesting album covers with the swastikas. And
it was a song called Heil Hitler, and he was selling T-shirts with swastikas on them.
Yeah, so he's behaved absolutely outrageously and disgustingly, and to put it down to bipolar or some mental. Well, what about the people around him?
Well, that's what we were saying earlier. Is that he didn't put those T-shirts on his own website.
I mean, do people like that? I mean, should people? Of course, they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be tolerated. I mean, he sort of did apologise and say that he'd lost touch with reality. But apparently he's had this obsession with Hitler for decades.
Well, but it leaves you to wonder why it is that some radio stations in this country are still playing his records.
Yeah,
so there's a bit of a double standard there.
No, totally. No, I think and apparently he's quite an arrogant and obnoxious fellow,
not unsurprising, apparently. I would say.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you. Brilliant. So that's it. That's the end of the papers. Given this fresh information, we will be looking into what has happened in Washington.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with the really good news that the deadline, which would have been in an hour's time, has now been replaced with a 2-week ceasefire. We're still waiting to get more details on this. We've not heard from Iran yet. No statement from Iran on this, but we do have Donald Trump's Truth Social statement, which I will read to you again. It says, based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we've already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of the past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalised and consummated. On behalf of the United States of America as President and also representing the countries of the Middle East, it is an honour to have this long-term problem close to a resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So that's his statement that has come out. He's agreed to suspend bombing in Iran for 2 weeks, but we're only really hearing from the American side of this. We're hearing nothing from Israel and nothing from Iran at this stage. But this is really good news. It's a really good sign, particularly for the people of Iran. So we wait with bated breath, actually, to get confirmation from Iran. It comes to something, doesn't it, where you don't quite trust the word of the President of the United States, and I'm afraid I don't. So I will be looking to see if we can get confirmation from the other parties that are involved in this war. But it is an interesting one. Some people will say that this is a testament to Trump's tough talk, that this is what he does, this is how he does it, and others will say that he was desperate for an off-ramp, and this is another taco. Trump always chickens out. Well, joining me to discuss this with me now, I'm absolutely thrilled to say, is Bill Keeler, host of First News with Keeler on WIBX Radio in New York. Bill, wonderful to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Of course, Trump is going to flag this as a win for his tough talk, but how will this go down, do you think, in the US?
So it's quite interesting. There's still about 35% of the country that is in complete support. And it's baffling at times that even when, like the Easter tweet that came out, or social media post that came out with the F word, and it's shocking that there's a part of this country that is okay with that, saying that is Donald Trump, but it's more of a mafioso negotiation. You can't negotiate with someone like this when they threaten the worst. It's like they're coming in and saying, you do this or we're going to kill you. That's mafia talk. And that's where we are.
And that is where we are with Donald Trump. But as you said, his base will very much see this as that's our Trump. You know, that's our man. He talks the common language. He gets things done. So this will read quite positively, won't it, for GOP? Will it, or will there be whispers about this really being a taco?
Well, there are whispers, but it's all happening behind closed doors, and the whispers are the competency of this president. And Joe Biden. Listen, we had conversations. Sometimes you were worried that he wasn't going to be able to make it to the podium.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden wasn't destroying the world. There's a little bit of a difference here, and this is someone who seems to have narcissistic tendencies just look at a whole civilization will die tonight, never to come back again. What president says such a thing? That is what we will never come back from.
And it is interesting, isn't it, that you've got voices like Marjorie Taylor Greene now, who was, snap her in half and she would read MAGA, a real Donald Trump supporter, one of his biggest supporters, one of the shoutiest supporters, now calling for the 25th Amendment.
Tucker Carlson and others who have, so there is movement. And the approval rating is now down to about 33 to 35%, and that's basically all Republican. But this war has really torn MAGA apart. Not saying that MAGA has completely walked away from Trump, but it tore them apart because this was supposed to be the president who didn't get involved in other affairs. This is make America great again, not Israel, not Iran, and elsewhere throughout the world. So I really believe that there is that element that, and as I said, there's talk in Congress, but all of it's behind the doors based on these press conferences. And if you really sit down and watch one, it's demented. There's no topic. He doesn't stay on topic. He's all over the place. Sometimes you can't even understand what he's saying. So that's having an effect. But we're still in the middle of this. And now at least we have a 2-week ceasefire, if it lasts.
Well, again, this is the thing. When my introduction there, it comes to something where you don't trust the word of the President of the United States. And certainly Iran has got no reason to trust Donald Trump. There's twice now in recent history where negotiations have been taking place and bombing happened during those negotiations. So there is an understanding, I believe, that the Iranians want a Congress to underpin any promise from Donald Trump because they don't believe him, they don't trust him.
Yeah, and well, there's plenty of evidence just in what is being told to us, let alone in negotiations. Oftentimes you hear one thing from the administration, and then a completely different story that's coming from President Trump. I believe it was France that said maybe a little less talk might be a good idea. But this is it's something we as a nation have never dealt with. And I have to say, the midterms don't happen until November. That's a long, long time.
I mean, it certainly is for this president because things change on a pin, don't they? They literally do. If you see what he's managed to achieve in terms of disruption across the globe in the last year and a bit that he's been in power, November certainly is a yawning distance away. There is some concern, of course, that obviously Trump wants an off-ramp. He's got embroiled in something that he didn't, and by his own admission, he didn't understand. He said in the Oval Office, we weren't expecting Iran to retaliate. Nobody saw that coming, apart from everybody saw that coming. And so he's definitely in over his head. There is no doubt about that. But he needs to get this done and dusted for those midterms.
Yeah, I think he needs to get this done for the world. It's certainly affecting the world economy and the price of everything, absolutely everything. And I just feel that the midterms, as I said, it's a long. I feel that I'm like a lab rat. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I check my phone because the news cycle happens when you say it happens. It turns on a dime. the news cycle changes with Donald Trump 6 or 7 times a day.
Yeah.
It's tough to keep up. So as I said, November's a long time away, and I'm not sure that something big isn't going to happen between now and then that changes the entire dynamic. And don't ask me what that is, because I would be a conspiracy theorist. But,
all right. Okay. But is it to do with the midterms?
I think ultimately it does. The other thing is, I have to say, as someone who has not been a supporter of Trump since the beginning, and I'm a Republican, you cannot count him out. Every time you think this is it, they'll never recover from this, and all of a sudden he just comes out smelling like a rose. I've never seen anything like it.
It is quite extraordinary.
This is different. This is different. I feel like the press conferences are so unhinged. Something is going on here, and I think it's mental capacity. I'm really fearing where we're going here.
Yeah, I mean, like you, Bill, I mean, I was saying earlier on that I haven't had a good night's sleep since Trump came into power, because I will, at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, look at my phone, and it's something else that is extraordinary, right? It's none of it is ordinary, but we are starting to see that there's now an impeachment, I believe, being put forward for Pete Hegseth for war crimes and fraudulent behaviour. We've seen at least Pam Bondi fall, maybe at Trump's hand, but she's fallen. Kristi Noem as well. Conversations that what's her name is next. Tulsi Gabbard is next. So we are starting to see a shift in the GOP.
Well, even with Marjorie Taylor Greene, think about that. If anyone would have predicted that, I would have said they were crazy. But look where we are. No one is safe. So there is some unraveling happening, and I also think that it's important for Democrats to figure things out.
Yeah, the Democrats have been weak over all of this.
If there's ever a party that's going to have the perfect scenario and then shoot themselves in the foot and lose, it's the Democrats. So but I do see there are more moderate candidates. We're not arguing about some of these issues that really dragged them down during the Kamala Harris run. I think that sticking to the platform of affordability and safety, all of those things play really well, I think, with both parties. And Democrats just have to stay on course, or they're going to blow it.
Yeah, I mean, it is literally that, isn't it? When you look at them and you think and that's maybe why they're not saying anything or doing anything, because they don't want to risk this sweet spot that they've got at the moment before the midterms. Maybe we'll see more action after the midterms. I think that's what they're waiting for. But nonetheless, it's not an edifying sight, and you think, oh, come on, somebody do something, right?
Something.
Just something, anything. So with Donald Trump, this will be a win for him. He will say that he has achieved this. He will also say that he's ended another war, even though he's started one. I
think we're up to 9. Is that 9?
Yeah, that would be 9 now. 9. Yeah. But I don't think it counts if you start one first and then finish. I don't know. I don't know if that counts. But will this go down as a taco?
Again, for that 35%, it's victory. For everyone else, I mean, you just knew something had to, God forbid, something had to happen today before 8 o'clock, because what was being threatened would just, I don't know what would occur. How will the rest of the world react if we did what he promised? So, yeah, I think as it stands right now, if he were running, and he is certainly dragging down Republicans in the midterms, if he were running, he would be in big trouble. The movement against him is really big, and I think it's enough where these people who may not normally vote in a general election are registering, getting set to vote. I think it's going to be very interesting. The turnout will be huge come November. But again, it's a long way. I keep saying it's almost like your favorite sports team, and you say they can't lose. And whatever happens when you, God forbid, you put a little money on it, they always lose.
They always do lose. But there's also talk, of course, about Trump running again. Or not running again, because he can't be elected a president again. That's what the Constitution says. But he can slip in through the back door as vice president.
Well, I guess that's possible. And that, again, now we're 2.5 years away. So God forbid, I don't know what will happen there. But I think that he's done. And I think the aging that has gone on in the last few years, I think that even his own supporters are looking at it's time. And, you know, people like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are looking to run. But again, this war is going to, depending on how this story is told, this war will drag both of them down. You'll note J.D. Vance is staying away from everything right now. We don't see him in the news.
Well, he's in Hungary at the moment, backing another right-wing totalitarian.
Yes. And he's trying to stay completely away from this war as if, and the reporting has been that he wasn't for this action, but I think he's strategically being very quiet. So what happens then, I don't know. I fear more, and just think about this and log this away for next year. Let's say the Democrats have a sweeping victory. They take control of the House and the Senate. Now they move to impeach. I worry about what happens to America at that point. Remember what happened on January 6th. I really worry about what happens then.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because he has such a hold on the sort of fervent MAGA. And I worry as well about the midterms, because there will be a denial of that process to some degree, whether it be before or after. And if the Democrats do win, there'll be a lack of willingness to accept the result. You're in very tricky waters at the moment.
We are.
And can you just stop dragging the rest of the world into them as well?
Listen, we'll be traveling this summer to Europe, and my wife has already purchased 3 I'm a Canadian t-shirts. I don't know what she's going to use them for. But,
I can't imagine.
She might demand I wear it.
I think that's a good idea. Well, if you're passing through, Bill, let us know, won't you? I'd love to meet you in the flesh. Bill Keeler there, Fox host of First News with Keeler on WIBX Radio in New York. Going to take a quick break. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. Now that we know that the deadline has shifted from 1 o'clock until 2 weeks' time, that because apparently some deal has been struck. We're still waiting to hear from Iran, but it says Iran says there will be talks with the US in Pakistan on Friday. So that's the latest line from Iran, is that there will be talks with the US in Pakistan on Friday. The price of oil fell, unsurprisingly, following the Donald Trump announcements that he would suspend the bombing of Iran for 2 weeks. So the oil fell by 8%. US crude oil fell to around $103 per barrel after trading as high as $117 per barrel earlier on Tuesday. Trump said the temporary ceasefire would be subject to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, a key route, of course, in the shipping of oil from the Gulf. There's around 2,000 ships waiting to go through. My understanding is that about 200 can go through in a day, but I think that sounds unlikely. But you know, they can get those through. That's 10 days to get all those ships through the Strait of Hormuz. So we wait and see if it is indeed open to all shipping later on today. So we'll see what happens then. But Donald Trump's saying that there is now some agreement. There's a 10-point proposal plan from Iran, and believe it to be a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the US and Iran, must be being brokered through Pakistan. But a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalised. So that is the latest state of play. We'll bring you more as soon as we get it. We've not heard directly from Iran at this stage, but Iran says they forced the US to accept a 10-point plan. So they're both still coming at each other from their different corners. Trump declaring that he's won, Iran declaring that they've won. But of course, that was bound to happen. But at least, at the very least, there is no annihilation of a complete civilization happening in 35 minutes' time, which is just such a huge relief, and it should be to all of us around the world, actually. Let's take a call now. Sarah's in Liverpool. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Petrie.
So here we are, Iran saying they forced the US to accept this 10-point plan. America saying, Trump declaring that he's managed to get this, you know, they can work on this. So both declaring victory at this stage.
This to me smells like taco. Because I wouldn't believe Donald Trump if he said rain was wet. This man is a noted liar. He's a bully. In fact, he gives, considering his first lawyer that he employed when he took over his father's company was Ray Cohn, who was a well-known mafioso lawyer. I'm not surprised of his tactics. He had never graduated from the infant playground. He is an overgrown school bully, and these are his typical tactics. If a bully is faced by another bully, they'll back down. If a bully is faced by someone who's trying to appease or be reasonable with them, like we've seen with most world leaders around the world, then he will spit in their eye and kick sand in the face.
Which he has done.
Which he's done on more than one occasion, and not to mention meddling in other people's affairs like he is doing at the moment in Hungary with their election.
Yeah.
And Trump had to back down. He's got everyone, every world leader, with the Pope leading the charge, saying, you do this, pal, you're up for genocide. You will be in the international court whether you like it or not, and your feet won't touch the ground. And the same with your cronies. And no doubt the American generals, if they've got any guts about them, would have said, excuse me, Mr. President, we know you've never had a uniform on your back, but I'm afraid you are going to have to back down right now.
Because they would be complicit in war crimes and held accountable. But of course there's been a purge of those generals because Pete Hegseth said, well, we wanted people more aligned with Donald Trump, in other words, to do his bidding. Of course, they've sacked them all.
That's the problem. Anybody in the US government, be it in the military, security services, civil service, or anything. Anyone who says, or law enforcement like the FBI, would say,
no.
Excuse me, Mr. President, you're wrong.
Yeah.
The first thing he said is, here's your equivalent of the P45.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. And he doesn't like anyone who tells him that he's wrong, which apart from anything else, is a typical in somebody who is a mafia boss or a gangster, as anyone who's ever seen them in action would know. But in a world leader, that is a bad move. And
I mean, honestly, the language that he's been using, you know, the entire civilization will die tonight. I mean, who the hell does he think he is? I mean, honestly, he really does. It's the language of somebody who thinks he's the ruler of the world, right?
That's it. I think what we're looking at is somebody who thinks he is, well, he does think he's a democratically elected despot, let's be perfectly honest. But he thinks, because says he is the leader of the free world, he thinks that means I am the despot of the free world, and whatever I say, everybody else has got to go, oh yes, we bow down to you. When actually everyone's gone, you know what, you can go and do, sunshine, take a hike, as everyone else in NATO has done. And rightly so. Because Trump, the way he's behaving worse than Henry VIII during one of his little despotic fits, and that's saying something. And to be perfectly honest, this man is not fit to even be president. Why the Republicans let him through, I will never know, and why the American people voted him, especially after the last time, is beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, which is why they're saying that America won't be trusted for decades, because they could do something like this again. Sarah, good to talk to you. I've got to break off because we have got some breaking news. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has announced that Iran will agree to a ceasefire if attacks against Iran are halted. He continues, for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible. This will take place via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. But we do have confirmation now from Iran, from the foreign minister. Abbas Araghchi has announced Iran will agree to a ceasefire if attacks against Iran are halted. He continues, for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible, which will be an enormous relief to those ships that are waiting to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Now they've just got to get them through as quickly as possible. Like I said, I think it's around 200 a day in normal busy times can go through, and we've got about 2,000 backed up at the moment. So they're going to, at pace, be trying to get those ships through the Strait of Hormuz. But again, it all depends on if attacks on Iran are halted. We've not heard from Israel. That's the other part of the equation. Really, they've got to agree to stop bombing Iran as well. And even earlier on today, they were bombing infrastructure, railways. So that's really, really important that we hear from Israel, as well now. So for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible. So that is a huge relief to the economies around the world, if only a respite for 2 weeks. Right, I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you, just looking at the 10-point plan for the conditional ceasefire. This is according to Iran. We've got this. I'm just going to run through this quickly before my next guest. 1, complete cessation of the war on Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen. Surely that is Iran. Anyway, complete and permanent cessation of the war on Iran with no time limit, ending all conflicts in the region in their entirety, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, establishing a protocol and conditions to ensure freedom and security of navigation of the Strait of Hormuz, full payment of compensation for reconstruction costs to Iran, full commitment to lifting sanctions on Iran, release of Iranian funds and frozen assets held by the United States. For that, Iran will fully commit to not seeking possession of any nuclear weapons, and an immediate ceasefire takes effect on all fronts immediately upon approval of the above conditions. So a lot of those I would have thought were not possible to achieve, but that's several news sources, and the CNN and Gulf News are also saying that Israel have agreed to the 2-week ceasefire. So this is several news sources, and we've not been able to confirm it directly from Israel, but several news sources, including CNN and Gulf News, say Israel have also agreed to the ceasefire. So the diplomacy now kicks in. And joining me to discuss this is Professor Peter Hahn, who is author and distinguished university professor at Ohio State University. And he's authored several books on US diplomacy and the Middle East. It is really good to see you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
You're quite welcome. It's nice to be here.
Now, we're hearing from Iran that they have forced the US to agree on this 10-point plan. That is not the language that Donald Trump is using. With both sides claiming victory, how easy is it for that diplomatic process to take place?
Both sides claiming victory is not unusual in a military engagement that has not reached a clear and decisive battlefield resolution. To a certain degree, that's a certain amount of bravado. Speaking to their domestic audiences, trying to make it sound like they have been the saviors of the day. To a certain extent, it's diplomatic posturing, trying to stake out a superior offensive-leaning position from which they can face their adversaries across the negotiating table in the days ahead. Deeper than that, the questions I think that will drive the diplomacy are whether the two powers can come to a mutually agreeable set of terms that will extend this announced 2-week ceasefire into something more enduring. The Iranian peace plan, which you just shared with your audience a few minutes ago, does seem to encompass a comprehensive set of terms that could become the basis for a final settlement. However, that would demand moral and political concessions by the U.S. and to a certain degree by Iran as well. And it's unclear whether the leadership of those two countries is prepared to make that kind of statement or make that kind of sacrifice that might redound to their disadvantage at some point.
I mean, it sort of reminds me of the proposal for peace between Russia and Ukraine, where you know, you can say 90% of it is easy to achieve, but the last 10% of it is not going to be negotiable. Is there anything on that list that you think that America won't agree to, that Iran won't agree to?
Iran giving up its nuclear weapons is a significant concession on the part of Iran. Now, when push comes to shove, the question of how the degree to which that is honored or the degree to which the U.S. or other non-Iranian entities can verify that Iran has sacrificed its nuclear weapons, that's a different question. There's still the unresolved issue of the weapons-grade plutonium that the Iranians have amassed, something like 1,000 pounds of it under whose custodianship will it pass? To whom will it pass? Control of the Straits of Hormuz is obviously a major issue to the international community and the international economy. Iran has seemingly indicated it will resume normal operations in the Straits of Hormuz, and if that proves true, then that would be a major breakthrough. But if there are ongoing hindrances, or if there are vulnerabilities that continue to send shockwaves through the international economy, then that issue would have to be worked on diligently by the diplomats at the table as well.
What about the compensation for reconstruction costs to Iran? We know that Donald Trump fancies himself as the world's greatest businessman. Is he going to agree to that if it's American companies that can go in and do or he can build Trump Tower or whatever it is he wants to build in Iran?
Yeah, I don't have a good sense of what type of financial toll there has been in Iran. I know it's been massive. I haven't seen a dollar figure or a euros or pound figure put on that yet. And to what degree the Iranians would demand 100% compensation, or to what degree the Americans might facilitate at the other extreme some kind of token business investment, or whether the international community through the UN or some coalition of the willing will step up and give at least a token or an investment kind of compensation, all remain to be seen in the days ahead. Any type of compensation would also carry political overtones. It would look like some kind of a concession, or if not capitulation, by the United States if it comes from the United States. And that would be something that Donald Trump would have to weigh carefully in his political calculus about how he looks, how his reputation is enhanced or undermined by the negotiations that follow. The president's in a delicate situation because many of the terms he announced at the start of the war, like regime change or unconditional surrender, have not yet been met. Over the last 24 hours, his threats to annihilate Iran's civilization, which troubled many people around the world because it hinted at some kind of a, weapon of mass destruction, a nuclear bomb or something, or tactical nuclear weapons being used. That was bluster that he then didn't carry through, maybe thankfully, but it does cost him a certain amount of political face because he made a threat and then he backed down conditionally.
And not for the first time either.
Not for the
so
first
it does
time,
look
right.
like a taco.
That's true. Yeah, it does strike as a taco. And, his predecessor, not Biden, but Obama, blinked in a way like this with Syria. And Donald Trump sort of crucified Obama on the campaign trail for having backed down on Syria. So this might be a hard one for Trump to sort of square the circle. He can engage in his usual behavior of declaring that everything he did was brilliant and a success and it led to a great outcome. But that might persuade fewer and fewer people within the U.S., to say nothing of persuading virtually no one overseas.
Yeah, no one overseas, I think, will be persuaded that this is any kind of a victory. I mean, getting the Strait of Hormuz opened, it was open before this war of choice.
And it was closed as a consequence of the action the U.S. took.
Exactly that. The other thing is, just in terms of diplomacy, because of course, I do keep mentioning this, Israel is in this as well. And one of the conditions is a complete cessation of war on Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen. And all of the messaging we've received from Israel is that they're not going to stop what they're doing in Lebanon. In fact, they're taking land. They want the Lebanese land. So how much more difficult is it when you've got a third party as well to consider, and they've got completely different aims to the one that you're trying to negotiate?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the days ahead. The Israelis and the Americans have historically had a partnership, and during the Trump years, it's been an extremely close partnership, the closest it's been closer than it's been under any other U.S. presidential administration. The war against Iran of recent weeks has very much been a collaboration between the U.S. and Israel. And there's some reason to think that the Israelis, as the junior partner, will have to give in to or go along with United States leadership. On the other hand, the Israelis bristle with pride that they are not a puppet of the United States. They're an independent nation state, and they are prepared, they will say, to make their own independent conclusions without regard to countervailing pressure from Washington, D.C. So it'll be interesting to see in the days ahead the extent to which Donald Trump can force Netanyahu to conform his behavior with U.S. wishes. I think, generally speaking, the partnership will last, meaning that Trump and Netanyahu will figure it out. There might be a little tension or a little argument around the edges, but I think both of those leaders will calculate that maintaining a united front is in their own best interest, in his own best interest. Each leader will decide that, and so they'll find a way to get through their disagreements behind closed doors and maintain a united front to the external world community.
The problem is, though, is that Israel has made no secret of its wishes with Lebanon, and they may have agreed to a ceasefire, certainly over Iran, but we haven't seen any details of whether they've agreed to suspend operations in Lebanon, and that seems to be really quite an important part of this 10-point plan. It's number one. It
would be indeed. Now, the ceasefire, if all parties adhere to it, would involve the Israelis ceasing fire against Hezbollah in Lebanon. It would also involve Hezbollah, presumably, ceasing fire against Israel. So it's not out of the question that a truce, uneasy truce, could develop in Lebanon, freezing into some kind of status quo, or maybe reverting to a status quo antebellum. That certainly isn't automatic. I wouldn't assume that that's certainly going to happen. Lebanon could remain a flashpoint, and as such a flashpoint, it could bring down the whole 2-week ceasefire by stoking tensions across the front. But if both parties are sincere and wanting to get out of this mess, then I don't think Lebanon is necessarily an unsolvable problem.
But do you think that Netanyahu does want to get out of this mess? I mean, he has, he will occasionally agree with Trump and then go his own way and do something himself.
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen. I do think that he begins leaning into his partnership with the United States very heavily because his country is still heavily dependent on the U.S. He tried mightily to fight this kind of war beginning in the first Obama administration, maybe even in the late Bush years, and the answer from Washington was no, we're not going to let you do this.
Yeah, everybody said no.
Trump's the first one who gave him a green light. So, I think there's reason to think that Trump could turn that light red and that red light would have some significant meaning.
Oh, I guess we wait and see. Well, Iran has said that there are talks happening in Pakistan on Friday. Who do you expect to be there in terms of American diplomats or voices? Would it be Witkoff? Kushner?
I would expect it to be Witkoff, Marco Rubio, possibly J.D. Vance, since the president sort of delegated Vance to clean up this mess. Ironically, but given that Vance comes from the isolationist wing of the party that believed this war was a mistake in the first place, that any such foreign intervention in the Middle East should be avoided at all costs. So those three would be my top, at the top of my list of prospects.
And of course, it's come as quite a surprise that Pakistan is being this peace broker.
It's an unusual role for Pakistan, but it makes sense because they do have the good graces of both sides.
Yeah, well, let's hope that they absolutely achieve peace across the Middle East with those talks. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Professor Peter Hahn there, author and Distinguished University Professor at Ohio State University. Just running through those points again. Complete cessation of the war in Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen, complete and permanent cessation of the war on Iran with no time limit, ending all conflicts in the region in their entirety, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, establishing a protocol and condition to ensure freedom and security of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. That sounds to me, reading between the lines, that they want tolls for that to continue. Full payment of compensation for reconstruction costs to Iran, full commitment to lifting sanctions on Iran, release of Iranian funds and frozen assets held by the United States. Iran fully will commit to not seeking possession of any nuclear weapons, and which they had done, of course, before. In fact, there was a fatwa against nuclear weapons in Iran, but who will check that? I suppose that's the question. And an immediate ceasefire takes effect on all fronts immediately upon approval of the above conditions. Some of those will be easier to meet than others, and some of them won't be easy to meet at all. It's very interesting having a look at these conditions. But those are the conditions according to Iran. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you. And the 1 o'clock deadline that Trump had given, 1 o'clock our time, of course, now has been superseded by a 2-week ceasefire. It would appear, anyway, it's tentative, but it appears that there's an agreement to a ceasefire that Israel has already also agreed to. They have agreed to the ceasefire and suspended its bombing campaign. The White House has now confirmed that Israel are on board as well. I'm interested if that does include Lebanon. I presume that it would, but they've agreed to a ceasefire and suspended its bombing campaign. That sounds to me like on Iran, but we'll wait for details on that. The 10-point plan for the conditional ceasefire, according to Iran, and Iran is claiming that they have forced the United States to agree to the 10-point plan. And Donald Trump has said that we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran. So I imagine that they're pleased to see that Iran fully committing to not seeking possession of nuclear weapons is their number 9 point. But yeah, there are lots of things on there they can agree to, and there are some there that I can't imagine that America will agree to. But the Iranian Supreme National Security Council has said in a statement following the announcement of conditional ceasefire that negotiations will be held in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, with a maximum period of 15 days for the details to be finalised. The statement said that the negotiations will be held so that Iran's victory in the field would also be consolidated in political negotiations. So Iran claiming victory at this point, and I suppose the victory for them is survival. The regime's survival, because despite Donald Trump saying there is a brand new regime there absolutely isn't. It is exactly the same regime with a different face. That is all it is. But the statement has gone beyond the 10-point plan that's been announced by state TV, and the statement has said that the US has agreed to guarantee not to repeat its aggression against Iran, the continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. So we're worse off than we were, because that does now confirm to me that that is about tolls. So there will be a cost to using that. Acceptance of uranium enrichment, lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions, termination of all resolutions of the UN Security Council and International Atomic Energy Agency, payment of compensation to Iran, and withdrawal of US combat forces from the region, and cessation of war on all fronts, including the Islamic resistance of Lebanon. So that's Hezbollah in Lebanon. So apparently America, this is according to Iran, has agreed to those conditions, the continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, which they didn't have before all of this. So that does lead me to believe that they will be demanding a toll, and reportedly it's been $2 million per tanker going through. I mean, it's happened in the Suez Canal. It was only a matter of time before it happened, but that is going to put an extra price on our energy coming through the Strait of Hormuz. A small price to pay compared to what we have been paying in terms of not getting ships through, but nonetheless, America continuing to support Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz may actually cause regional tensions, because Saudi Arabia and the other GCC countries are not going to be very happy with relinquishing that control. It was indeed in international waters. So relinquishing that control to Iran may cause some contention, I would imagine. Anyhow, a message here from Snakebite, who says, I doubt even the most war-hardened career military leader would ever resort to Trump's actions. Trump has never served in the military, otherwise he wouldn't behave the way he has. That's very true, Snake. I completely agree with that. But would probably still behave that way in another matter. Yeah, of course. Right, let's go to the calls, and Grace is on the phone now. Grace, you called it. You said he'd taco.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably just my inability to imagine really dramatic things happening.
No, I was the same, Grace. I couldn't believe that it could ever go ahead. It was just not. I couldn't accept that would be allowed, that would happen.
Well, what's allowed or isn't allowed seems to be moot at this point with Trump, doesn't it? But he doesn't really stand for anything. He's just a big showman all the time. I noticed your guest at the beginning referring to Christian Zionism, and I completely understand what he's referring to, but I hate referring to anything as Christian when it's not actually involving the following of Christ, and Trump and his acolytes are most definitely not doing that. I was really horrified.
Well, they've been calling this a holy war, haven't they?
Yeah, it's absurd.
And that Trump is Jesus, or better than Jesus, or whatever.
Yeah. He likened himself to Jesus specifically within the last week and a half, I guess. And they talked about Easter at this press conference, and the thing about Easter is that those of us who do believe that Jesus died because we've all sinned. It's not the case that some people are favoured by God and God is on the side of some people, and so some people are allowed to do whatever they want. No, actually, all of humanity has sinned and is offered forgiveness and is loved by God. And Jesus told us to love our enemies. So Trump trying to make out that somehow he gets to do whatever he likes and God will facilitate whatever he wants and look favourably on whatever he does because he's on the good side, and Iranian people, they're all bad. That's really not the Christian message at all, and it's really disgusting to see how he's kind of so egotistical, and a bunch of people are just lauding him and enabling him. He's completely missed the point. And in addition to the poor people of Iran who have been so affected by this conflict, people in other parts of the world have been far more severely affected than we have in terms of cost of living. We hear regularly about how the cost of living is being affected, but there are people in far poorer parts of our world who are being affected far more severely by the impacts on global shipping.
And will be for a long, long time to come as well.
Yeah.
Because everything's got to be rebuilt. Even if this is the end of it, then everything's got to be, all the places that were bombed, all the stockpiling. They're going to have to start up refineries again. All of that. Yeah. It's going to take a long time.
It's horrifying, and it's also destructive. It's such a waste, And those of us who do believe in man-made climate change might also think about the fact that all these wars are really adding to emissions. There will be more refugees, and I'm not anti-refugee in the way that a lot of people are, but those people who are worried about refugees should actually be thinking about that, and those of us who have a concern for humanitarian issues should be concerned that people are losing their homes and their loved ones. It's all just a big mess, and it's not going to make things better for America in the long term, because it's just going to lead to more